Are you stuck? How about unhappy? Join Alena Chapman, author, mentor, and life coach for Magical Moments with Alena as she challenges you to get out of the doldrum and start living your life to the fullest. In just 60 minutes, Alena will help you take control of your life and push you to do the things you never thought you'd do. So get ready to take back your power and celebrate life with Magical Moments featuring Alena Chapman.
Welcome to Magical Moments, and I am your host, Alena Chapman, and this is all about that ease and betterment in your life, especially in these times. How do we do it? How do we keep our momentum up? How do we keep ourselves safe? And the magical nugget for today is, with everything that's going on, and even with these masks, I was in New York this past weekend, and I have to say, now they're over the crisis. They're one part of our nation that is over the crisis. However, they're starting to see a second wave. But there was a different New York. I used to travel back to New York once a month, and I just went back. I have not been back since November. And we're now almost a year. And with this COVID and everything, how it's changed. Well, all right, everybody is out of their home. They're trying to make everything beautiful. And this is what I'm seeing. There's not that rush. People are taking time. They're taking time to sit and talk, and there's just a more easiness. And the one thing I really noticed, which I would love for everyone, all our parts of America to follow, the kindness. There was just kindness and a gentleness. There was the harshness is gone. Sometimes with big cities, everybody just kind of keeps their blinders on and walks. Well, it's gone. And I think in this time that we're going through as a nation, it's the kindness. It's the genuine caring that we need. And that can be just in saying hello or holding the door for someone or just little ways. Yes, we're wearing masks, but that doesn't mean we are invisible. And I think we have to understand that we are more than just what we say in our words. It's our actions. And when we do that, then we can still have community, and the transition when it comes, and we have to go from where we are now out of the masks, and that day will come. Well, we'll find out that today. But when that happens, then we will be walking into a better world. We create our world. What do you want to create? All right, so now I have a very interesting guest for you today. This is Dr. Rajeev Fernando. Now, he spearheads the Mask Up Earth campaign through his global self-funded charity. And I think it's Chirage, he will correct that for me, is the organization. And it was established in his parents' honor. He was the first American doctor to go to Wuhan, China, on January 16, 2020. Oh, my gosh. To investigate the COVID-19 when there were only 55 cases. Oh, my gosh. That was a long time ago. And was the first physician to declare human-to-human transmission before the World Health Organization. He has done numerous international consultations for the management of COVID-19 and co-managed cases in Brazil and Mexico. Beyond recommending people to wear masks, he and his team have now started Mask Up America campaign, which went global and became the current Mask Up Earth campaign, because we're not the only ones suffering with this, as we know, that has sent masks to all over the 19 countries around the world to areas most affected by poverty and social injustices. Very important. And with that, hello, Dr. Fernando. How are you today?
Hi, Alena. Thank you for your more than generous introduction. It's very kind of you, and I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yes. I'm very excited because you are the star of the show right now with everything going on in this world. Oh, all right. So you were one of the first ones, 55 people. Oh, my gosh. I can't even remember when it was that low.
Yeah, this was back in January, and I think there were probably more cases, but the government might have been hiding it. But when we got there, when I got there, it was recorded about 55 cases in the world at that time. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! And how did they see that this? We might as well find out. We've heard it through. We don't really always get the straight story. I mean, what alarmed with only 55 cases? What set off the alarm?
For me, I investigate these outbreaks all over the world, and I've done that over the past few years. When there is an Ebola outbreak, I flew to Sierra Leone to investigate. Once again, there was one 2 years ago. I'd gone to the Democratic Republic of Congo border. And then for the Zika virus in Brazil. So, there's a lot of literature we can read. But for me, I really like to go down and investigate things on my own. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So of course, I review literature. I'm happy to, discuss things. But I really like to go down, get dirty, and understand what is going on with the patient. And in this situation, I was really concerned, and I wanted to bring back my information to the American public, because they deserve to know what was going on. And that's the motivation of all my trips. These are all self-funded, and I just want to keep people safe. And that was the reason I'd actually gone down there to investigate.
Interesting. But why was 55 people enough to set off everyone worrying about this virus? I mean, we suffer with the flu. There's many more than that in a year. So what was it about this 55 people that said, ooh, this is kind of weird?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I followed the trend because in 2003, where I was probably, just getting out of medical school at that time, in 2003, this is what's called SARS coronavirus 2, the current one we have. But in 2003, there was SARS coronavirus number 1.
Yes.
And that had the same background, where people getting infected with, exposure to bats, animals over there. And that had the same approach in 2003. Once again, it traveled globally from, parts of Guangzhou, China, to Hong Kong, to Canada. Many countries in the world were affected. So when I started to follow this in December, I kind of thought this is the way this outbreak is going to go. And, at that time they were saying there's no human-to-human spread. But when I went there to investigate, there were clearly cases that they were human-to-human spread, and that's what I wanted to be transparent to America and the world, actually.
Oh, interesting. So it went from animals and then to human, and really fast. I mean, it was
very fast.
Very, very fast.
Yeah. The thing, Alena, is unfortunately, China was hiding a lot of the cases, and that was a problem, which is I couldn't have predicted this was going to be a pandemic at that time, because just based on the way they were hiding their numbers. But when I left the country, I realized how, there was a very anemic response in regards to, letting people go out of the country. And I was really shocked, actually, the way no one checked me, no temperature checks, nothing at all, no screening questions at the airport. But when I got into Hong Kong, completely different story. As soon as I got off the aircraft, there were people checking my temperatures, they were wearing hazmat suits, all kinds of things. A very different story. But I felt at this point, it just didn't seem right that, China was just allowing people to to go out, and that's when I was concerned. Forgive me, I just don't. This interview, I really don't want to make it political, but these are my thoughts when I went there in January.
Right, and it's very interesting. And I get it. You know, you have something in your country. You don't want the whole world to be set on fire with it. You think you can contain it. But on the other hand, you know, we all need to know. The world is a small place now. It really is.
It really is, you know.
Yeah.
I'm actually flying this weekend to do some work, give out our masks in Turkey and Dubai, and it's just a 3-day trip, actually. So in and out of Turkey in a day and a half, UAE, United Arab Emirates, in another day and a half.
I know.
So just really quick. It's just such a small place.
It's such a small place. I know. I have friends all over the world, you know, and it's very interesting. You know, I can't even think. Oh, I know. A friend of mine's having a baby in Corsica, for heaven's sakes. I mean, they're just everywhere, and it's just different. It's different than even when I was growing up in the 1960s and 70s, you know. It just 70s and 80s, actually. It's just a different place. So when one country is hurting, it has to put out the alarm to people.
Of course.
But now, okay, so we have this wonderful virus that's come into play, but you actually sounded the alarm, and then you got it set so that we are now, you know, how important the mask was. How did it go to, you know, just washing your hands to a full-blown mask?
Yeah, it's a great question. And for me, I always felt wearing a mask was the right way to go. As a matter of fact, when I came back to the States also, I was wearing a mask. So the one interesting thing is, at the time, with the WHO was not recommending masks and things like that, but you walk into Asia, they're very sensitized to these respiratory illnesses, and they've seen it before. They've firsthand seen the damage with what happened with 2003 SARS and the Hong Kong flu and in the past, and they're really sensitive to these respiratory illnesses. So irrespective of whatever any government is saying, I mean, most of the people were wearing masks at this point. Hong Kong, everyone was in masks despite the recommendations not to. So the U.S. and the many parts of Europe, they just haven't seen this before, and that's why, you know, it was very, we were late to the game to actually finally say we should do it. There's nothing else we could do. We sought guidance from all the big health authorities all over the world. But, yeah, that's the reason I think we were kind of slow and late to the game beyond the hand hygiene.
Very interesting. So, okay, and believe it or not, I have to say, we have not. I've been around. I've been, like I said, I went to New York. I'm seeing that we're not getting we haven't gotten much direction. Let's be honest. We really haven't gotten much direction. In fact, we hear one thing from one group, and then we hear yes, you should wear a mask. No, you shouldn't wear a mask. Yes, you should do this. No, you shouldn't do this. Some states close, some states open. Some states do that. I mean, it has been such a hodgepodge in the United States alone. I don't know about Europe, but here it has been. And so a lot of stuff hasn't even gotten to us. So, for instance, how does this transfer? I mean, I've heard some of it, but then I heard other people say, you know, no, that's not it. So what is it? How does this transfer?
Sure. There are two methods of transfer with this virus. The predominant method of transfer, which has been very effective, that's how the virus has been transmitted very effectively, is what we call something called respiratory droplets. And respiratory droplets are bigger molecules. And the way I like to remember droplets are drop to the ground, which means when you cough and it's within 6 feet, these respiratory droplets will drop to the ground if you're within 6 feet. That's the very important thing over there.
Yes.
That's why we have social distancing. So that's a simple concept. That's respiratory droplets. That is the main way of spread. Now, the other way of spread, which is, is just starting to evolve. It's not it's not the most effective method of transfer, and that's what's called airborne spread. Now, airborne spread, typically it happens with smaller molecules, and these, because they're so tiny, they're able to move around the air for further distances. And that's what happens with diseases like tuberculosis and things like that.
Yes.
But not very. There is some evidence of this airborne transmission for COVID-19, but it's not really established as the primary mode of transmission. But the primary mode is really, within, if it's more than 6 feet, if you're within 6 feet, that's when the transmission is the most.
Oh, interesting. So how about surfaces? It's not transmitted, like if I touch a doorknob somebody else has touched who has, their hands are contaminated. That is, that's the flu. But is that this? It doesn't sound like it.
A great question. I think any sort of respiratory virus can transfer it in this mode, but it's really important to understand that viruses are unlike bacteria. Bacteria can hang around surfaces in a different way, but viruses, in order to survive, they have to live within a human cell. So you're not going to have a long period of transmission when the virus is just not going to hang out over there. So if you were to mention on a doorknob, yeah, of course, in the perfect storm, someone who's touched the door, who's coughing up, a high infection, he's coughing something up, yes, you have it, that's a risk factor. But, if it's probably more than, it's hard to say the exact time, but there's been a lot of literature out there which says about 72 hours for some surfaces and 24, but I don't think that's the approach here. I just certainly don't. I think we just need a little bit more data to come out. But in my opinion, like transfer from food, fruits, and doors, these are all less common, actually.
Okay. Interesting. So, and so how hard has it been for you to convince organizations and people to I mean, there's so much there's just so much back and forth. People are very resentful for wearing it. I mean, I've seen that. I've seen some. I mean, okay, do I love it? I have to be doctor. I have to tell you, I'm not loving it, but I understand the need for it, and so I do it. But there are a lot of people who don't even understand the need. So where have we been disconnected, for heaven's sakes? Why are some of us feeling this is not needed and others feeling like this is life or death?
Yeah, unfortunately, once again, we hate to dive into some sort of political approach, but that really is the truth. There is something, because other countries, there are many countries where we use universal masking, and for me, really, and that's why we went down this campaign, which is beyond saying, wear a mask. I said, well, what about people who want to wear a mask and they can't get it? Impoverished countries, racial inequalities, indigenous populations. That's why we decided to start this campaign of being able to deliver the mask to the individual who's at risk. Our mission on Friday is really to go to Turkey and to help the refugee people. A lot of our distributions are through charities, but a lot are on the streets, actually. We surf the streets. We go around looking for, homeless shelters, people involved with drugs, IV drugs. We find the vulnerable population, and that's how we're giving out these masks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in many other countries, there's no choice. Let's say, for example, China had a very big lockdown, and I think that really helped. And here we weren't, even when there was a lockdown, it was hard to really establish a really good lockdown. So in the sense, people would still be coming out. There weren't any fines or anything like that, but it's punished very severely in a lot of countries. Italy, South Korea, I think they were charging like $8,500 if you're found outside.
Wow.
Violating the rules. Like Asia was very sensitive, but that lockdown was very successful for a lot of Asian countries, and that's because they trust the government, and two, they follow the rules. Even for countries like Africa, which we all expected would be really badly affected, they followed the rules. Like, when I was there for Ebola, I saw the whole country being chaotic. Healthcare infrastructure is so poor. But here, they just followed the government recommendations. And I thought these are the things that really help. So these kind of situations where when you're saying I have a right, I don't have a right, I can do what I want, that's when the trouble really starts. And sometimes I've noticed that's associated with certain political parties.
And I also think, really, America, we really haven't, I've been alive a little while anyway, we haven't had anything this drastic since I've been alive. And, now I know my grandmother, there was scarlet fever, polio. I know people who were affected by that. My scarlet fever, that's what my Nona died of later. It created a heart murmur and a flutter. So there were all these things they understood. But for people who of my generation are, we've not seen anything.
Right.
And I don't think we understood, I still don't think most of us understand how it can take down a population incredibly fast.
It's true, and these are the things that that worry infectious disease doctors when you go to bed at night. And for example, I follow the epidemics, pandemics all over the world, really epidemics, and it's up to us to really determine to say, well, is this epidemic going to curb down and just stay local, or what is the potential that this can actually get worse? So that's what we do as infectious disease doctors. We surf the whole planet and see, what's going on in different parts of the world, and that's the reason that I actually went down to China to investigate. But you do get epidemics, pandemics, but this is the one that probably knocks out like once in a century, like we saw actually exactly a century ago when we had the Spanish flu in 1918.
Wow.
So interestingly, this Spanish flu, once again, it was called the Spanish flu because Spain was really reporting the cases. All the surrounding countries had it, France, the UK, a lot of other European countries, but France was actually neutral in that world war, so they were the only ones reporting it. So it's not really Spain that was hit the worst, but it's a lot of other countries affected, but it was Spain that was reporting it, so it became known as
the Spanish flu. Yeah, interesting. And so we saw that. Yeah, I think people have just forgotten. But I do think that now, why are we still fighting the mask?
Personally for me, I really think masks are the single most important thing at this time that we have to prevent disease. I've gone all over to highly, countries where there are very high infection rates. Mexico and Brazil are, in the top 5, the highest infections in the world. But, really, they say, when I come back, they said, my God, what happened? Are you okay? And I said, I just did the right thing. Even when you're traveling, just do the right thing. Wearing a mask is the most important thing. And I think even after a vaccine, I still would, wear a mask because we don't know the durability of the vaccine, how many months it's going to last. There's so much information that we need to know about wearing masks. Now, for example, in countries like Asia, for example, or Japan, where when people get sick with a respiratory syndrome, the right thing to do, the proper etiquette to do when you go to work is wear a mask. It's just the right thing to do, whether you have COVID-19 or influenza or anything
stay
else.
Home.
If you're coughing, you're going to work with a mask. If you don't, it's considered rude, actually. So I think that will eventually become a culture, the way we are, the U.S. and parts of Europe. This will eventually become part of our culture where you say, hey, listen, you're coughing. Why aren't you wearing a mask? Things of that. I think that's what's going to happen to the United States and Europe as well.
Something does. It was getting to the point, because I have 3 kids, and they're getting older now. But and even when I was in college, and I haven't been in college. I was in college a long time, lots of degrees. So anyway, I saw a lot, and we were always pushed. When you're sick, you still go, you still do, you keep going, and then you go to the workplace. Okay, you're sick, you still go, and I never understood that philosophy because number one, I didn't appreciate somebody in my place that was sick. Go home. I mean, I really thought that. I didn't like when other parents sent their kids to school when they were sick. They'd be vomiting or they're throwing up. You need to go home. It's not a hard concept, but yet we're made to feel bad that we're going home when we're sick, especially in college. I felt that. It's interesting. We've gotten out of, and I don't understand what started that. We can conquer it all, but who are you infecting while you do it?
Exactly.
We grew up with a wrong philosophy about when we're sick.
No, totally agree. I think this will become part of the culture, eventually. And, even think about, with kids, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. If you're going to keep you wake up in the morning, your child is sick, you're coughing. I mean, what are you going to do? You have a business meeting at 9 o'clock, and what are you going to do? Cancel the meeting? You're the star of the meeting. What? There's so many other
Zoom it
complexities that come into play.
Yeah.
This pandemic has really woken up a lot of people, and we realize how important life is. That's the important thing. So,
that's right.
There's going to be a lot of change in practice after this, I feel.
Okay, well, we're going to take a break. And everyone, we're going to be talking about other ways that we can also fight this virus, feel comfortable, keep our loved ones safe, ourselves safe. We will be right back. You're listening to Magical Moments.
This is Magical Moments with Alena Chapman, helping you find your ease and betterment. Stay tuned for more of this week's featured interview.
Welcome back to Magical Moments. I'm your host, Alena Chapman, and yes, we're doing all that ease and betterment and getting ourselves in that knowledge so we can have that ease and betterment. And today I have Dr. Rajeev Fernando. And in the first half, we talked about Corona. Why? Well, because he was one of the first responding doctors in China when this first hit. And he also has been one of the major doctors to make a lot of decisions about masks and things like that. So he is in the know. And I'm so glad we have him on the show. And welcome back, Dr. Fernando.
Thank you again for having me. This poses a unique opportunity for me to talk to all the people out there and tell them what to do to stay safe this winter.
Yeah, it's a very big, important. And we've talked a lot about the logistics. I do have one question for you, though, that carries over from the first half. And that had to do with, we're in a state, Indiana. This is from Indiana. And in this state, we're considered a high risk. And what we've done now, it took us a long time to get into the mask thing. But it seemed like when we didn't have the masks, our hospital numbers were down. The rooms being filled were down. And yet when we went to the masks, we all of a sudden now have our full capacity of the rooms in the hospital are filled. What happened?
So that's a great question. And this really is a phenomenon that we're calling a mask fatigue or COVID fatigue itself. One of the things I see is, opening up these colleges and universities, kids, people just don't want to do it anymore. So from a mental status thing, I completely understand. People have been asked to wear masks since April. We're, moving down 5-6 months right now, and people just don't want to do it. Unfortunately, with that comes the consequences of as your as you're lacking or slacking on things where you decrease social distancing, hand hygiene, and masks, like I've always maintained, masks are the number one thing where a protective layer to prevent COVID-19. Now, I've gone all over the world, and really, people ask me, like, Dr. Fernando, how are you so safe? You've gone to Mexico, Brazil,
Yeah.
all over, and I'm actually going to Ethiopia this weekend to be giving masks over there as well. Yeah, we're started a big campaign. We're working on Ethiopia. We're trying to get through to Yemen as well. There's a lot of red tapeism, but we're trying our best to get there. We finally broke into Africa this week. We're going to be distributing masks with the WHO. So we made some progress. Yeah, we're very excited about this project, but that's really what's happening. It's just a fatigue of events, and when this fatigue sets in, it's easier for college kids to say, well, do I really need this or not? And so then they start taking off their masks and having these parties, and that's where everything is going. So the way to really understand is a simple explanation. If you see an increase in cases in a certain area, the first thing that obviously comes to mind is decrease in protective methods to prevent COVID-19. Yeah. That's straight up. The first thing you think of is always like, why are these cases going up? And the answer is people are laxing on the social distance measures.
Well, I do think you're correct in this, because I've watched my children's school, and I actually had one of my children home. He was the only one in school. Now, he does go to a private school, but I wanted to see how they would handle it this fall. And I have to say, they only had 2 cases in the high school. And Great. Then but the lower school, the little kids, like they have 2-year-olds all the way up to, And the thing was, I've heard none. They've had no cases. Wonderful. And those little kids are so good about wearing their mask all day, and they even have an extra one in case they forget it at home. And they're really, the teachers are being really great with them and not putting fear, but this is just something we can do and to protect, and it's needed to protect ourselves and others. And they have that's amazing. I think we've done better with this than any other virus I've seen.
That's phenomenal stuff. And schools like this should be an example. The other thing I talk about schools is you can't force the school to open up. Always talk to the school principal, the administration, and say, are you ready to open up? Can you handle this? And a lot of times schools say, I can't handle this, but we're being put under a lot of pressure. Those schools should not open. The minute the school says, we can't handle it, we're not ready, don't force them, because that's when you have all these breaks. And remember, kids are asymptomatic. A lot of them are asymptomatic, and they just they're not ill all the time because there's something called an ACE receptor. An ACE receptor, adults have a lot of these ACE receptors, and the what that means is the virus binds to ACE receptors, and that's how it causes disease. Now, in kids, the kids lack those ACE receptors, or they're much fewer in quantities. So when COVID-19 enters the respiratory tract, there's really nothing to bind to. So that's why kids are actually less infected. So so it's very important to really talk to the schools and say, are you ready or not? Because if you're not, we're just setting ourselves up for, a disaster. And I feel really bad for these kids, kids shouldn't be at home. They want to get out, they want to go to school. And, they're being bounced around by saying, well, come back to school. We got to close again. This really causes a lot of emotional turmoil for the child as well.
It really does. It really does. And I just keep holding the carrot that my kid is in high school. So I keep holding the carrot that, yes, you're going back after Christmas. And granted, he's big on the computer with all his friends. He sees all his friends that way, and that is a godsend for once. But I also want to kind of move in, when I was talking to you before, of course, my field as a spiritual curator is the emotional and the spiritual well-being of people.
course. Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit more about this because you had some very interesting insights about what we were dealing with now and even carrying forward from the corona. Where are people at, and what are we seeing in their emotional and their well, even their spiritual, but their emotional well-being at this point?
Yeah, great questions. And I'm so glad you brought this up because this is very important for the season coming up. We do know people in general, Americans are really depressed. This has been going on since April, and here we are in October. All the social distancing. I mean, what that does is that really keeps human beings further from each other, and
Yes.
people are starting to have fatigue with following these rules. But unfortunately, as we head into the winter time, these rules need to be enforced bigger than ever.
Yeah.
The other problem we have right now is obviously we're heading into colder, darker times, and you really think of seasonal depression, coming about.
Yes, and it does happen. I grew up in
It
Vermont.
does.
We used to call
Yeah.
it cabin fever. People would
Yeah.
go nuts.
Yeah, it's true. And I think about 5% of Americans actually develop a very severe form of seasonal depression. Of course, we need light over there. That's very important. That's been proven, the circadian rhythm. But it's a hard time for Americans right now. And I really, the message I want to give out to people is a positive one, which is, hey, do the right thing. That's what I always say. Do the right thing. We know the right thing to do. Just force yourself. We have to, at this point in time, we have to choose life over livelihood. Are we going to be able to get a beer sometime? Absolutely not right now. Not in a crowded bar. It will happen. Humanity will prevail. But we've just got to be patient. It's a very difficult time for everyone. So that we just have to keep going through. Self-care, very important. You have to take care of yourself. Absolutely.
Talk about self-care a little bit. What do you define as self-care, and what can people do to bring that self-care into their lives?
Of course. The first step really starts with what I was talking about before, is humanity will prevail, and be positive about this. This virus will go away. It's not the end of mankind. We just have to get through this phase. There will be a vaccine. There will be better drugs out there. This time will come. But it's very important to look at it positively. And this is the way I talk to my colleagues as well, physicians, and they say, oh my God, COVID-19 is coming back. I'm like, no, let's just think positive. We know what to do. We just have to enforce it and move forward. Think positive. So very important is taking care of yourself. Give yourself that time. So try to get out, get some sunlight. That's very important with the seasonal depression. Of course, get good sleep, eat healthy. Vitamins, greens are really good for health as well.
Yes.
And, a lot of times people tell me, I got to go to the gym, or I haven't gone to the gym. Great. If you can go, that's fantastic with a good hygiene gym. But if you can't do that, just walk outside your house, take 10, 15 minutes, get your cardiovascular system going. It really helps out. So these are some of the things.
Wouldn't it help more to be outside? I mean, when I'm out there and it's sunny, or even if it's cold, it's getting out into that air and breathing fresh air, and feeling the sun. Yeah, I think that helps your mental well-being, just being, and I have to say, when things are very closed down, when things were very closed down here, I would just love to get in my car and just drive. I just, just get out of the house, drive, put on some music you love, put on a podcast that you love, and just enjoy the moment. And I think it's anything that's going to feed you to you feel yourself lifting. And really, I think that's what people need. Being in the home alone, if you're not used to being alone, and sometimes we can't deal with our own self, let alone others.
Yeah, no, it's true. Relationships are very important at this time.
It is really
for people in stable relationships. That's wonderful. You're with you're in a nuclear family. You stay only with the person, and that's great. We need to continue that. But I'm concerned about people who are single, actually, because on all these kind of apps, which dating apps and things like that, it's hard to just trust someone, and because we don't know whether they have COVID-19 or not. So that's
That's
suffering.
interesting. Yeah, that is a
Yeah. Yeah. So, if you're meeting someone, make sure you get to know them better. I mean, the last thing, remember, when you're going out or, you're having sexual intercourse, the last thing you want is someone breathing all over you with COVID-19. So these are tough times. Like,
it is.
um, yeah, I've had that myself, where it's not the right time. We have to be so cautious. So people who are in stable relationships, that's wonderful. But the people who are not, definitely moving forward, we're talking about 4 or 5 months of this kind of winter. Go out, encourage yourself, but be really cautious before you commit to something. It's very important.
Yes, and I'm thinking because I'm single, and when I met someone during the COVID, we took a very long time, but it was still fun. That doesn't mean you don't have fun. You wear the masks, you follow the hygiene, you take those vitamins, and I want to bring up again the vitamins that we should take, and
Yeah.
also, but up your immunity. But don't just hop into the sack. You really got to get to know that person. You get to know their habits. You get to know how they're living, because that's important. It's so important right now. We never had to do that before. But if they're going to bars all the time and you're trying to be safe, there's a problem there.
There is. Yeah.
You've got to know that person inside and out. And then you can make a move into a more intimate relationship. But it takes time. It's time. It's not like everything is a whole. You have to isolate yourself into a cave, but you've got to be smart, and you have to follow. And then all caution to the wind is not the time to have that right now.
Of course. I didn't know you're single. Let me get your phone number at the end of at the end of this discussion.
That's so sweet. Well, thank you. I don't get that every day. That's very sweet. But anyway, you had mentioned, and I want to bring it up again. You mentioned 3 vitamins that can help our immunity and seem to be doing really well to fight this COVID. And what were those again?
Yeah, so the ones I like at this time are vitamin C, vitamin D as in David. Now remember, people in this time of the year with this seasonal depression, they're not getting enough. They're not getting enough vitamin D.
Yes.
So because we need sunlight for that. So always take more vitamin D, especially this time of the year. And the other one, which I feel is very good, is zinc. Zinc is a great mineral. Once again, these 3 all really boost your immune system. So we have to do everything we can to prevent spread. So I like vitamins, like we just mentioned, the masks, the social distancing, and hand hygiene. So if you really, really thinking this through, if you really optimize this, I mean, the chances of you getting this are slim.
Fair.
Really.
Yeah.
And the other thing for our listeners to understand is, like I want to stress on this: don't be afraid. Just think positively. Just think positively.
Yeah.
I see even doctors are like, "Oh my God, what's going to happen?" I'm like, "No, don't think that way. Just think positively. We know what to do." The physicians have better experience now. We've seen so much. We're more experienced. We have better treatments out there. So, it's we really look at this in a positive way. And I know it's hard to do that in this time where it's really a challenging thing. But, we will prevail. Humanity will prevail. And I urge all our listeners today just to be positive and do the right thing. That's really what's going to keep you safe from COVID-19.
I think the worst thing is when people feel that they don't have control. And so, but with the information we're giving today, and if they know, they don't have to be afraid of the virus. I always say fear is not what you need. What you need is information and then a smartness in going about it. And then it'll be okay. But if you have fear, then that's when it starts. That's when anger starts. Anybody you see without a mask, you just about go ape. And that means, but all it means is that person you stay away from, because obviously they do not see the severity of the situation. And number 2, you just you wash your hands. You keep your mask on, you wash your hands. You don't need to go up and yell at the person. It's control over what you do. And when you take control of your own well-being, maybe taking, I mean, doctor, what do you think about all the sugar? I mean, we have sugar in everything. Maybe downing that sugar a little bit, doesn't that suppress the immune system?
Yeah, there's a lot of data which says, well, we do know. Let's just break it down. People with diabetes are more susceptible to severe infections. So when someone is really sick, one of the first questions we ask is, why is he so sick? Does he have diabetes, or does he have some immune compromise? Why is he so sick? So diabetes and blood sugar is very, very important to make sure that you control blood sugars at a time like this.
Yeah, just watch what you're eating. Now's the time. Now that we're in this quasi state, we're wearing masks, but we're getting out there. This is the perfect time, folks, to start to look at how we want to be. And we're going to be cautious, but we can be healthy. This is the time to start eating the way you really always wanted to eat, but you never did. This is the time to maybe take time for yourself, which you never did. And that can be reading that book you always want to read, going for a walk with the dog, listening to the music and just dancing in the house, things that will help you lift your spirit up. That's it's time for that. And it's time to start looking at ourselves and saying, you know what? I'm a pretty cool person. And maybe stop the judgment. Start seeing, I'm taking control. I'm doing a good job. I'm finding a way. If I lost my job, I'm finding a way to do. I'm pretty darn cool. And starting to accept ourselves. That all those things are so important. And right now we are in a wonderful place to start doing that.
Yeah.
Every cloud has a wonderful silver lining. Grab it.
It's true. It absolutely will. That's the only way we're going to get out of this, by being positive. If we're going to succumb to fear once again, it's just going to be downhill from there. Just be confident and do the right thing.
Yeah. The fear just puts you in a tunnel, and there's nothing to grab hold of. And you just get deeper and deeper and deeper, and everything looks bad. I always say, this might be a really good time for you to start a gratitude pad. And to really start writing out those gratitudes and feel them and take that best part of your life into the day. I mean, that is the one way to change an attitude really fast. And it is that wonderful gratitude we have.
Sure.
Yeah. So it is. Now, you were talking about how you take time, because oh my gosh, with your busy schedule and traveling all over here. And you also make those wonderful masks, which you're giving out, which is awesome. I mean, wonderful giving. But with that, how do you take this? What is your idea of self-care? What do you do for yourself?
I have to be honest with you, completely guilty. I'm just living on planes these days, to be honest with you. I just got back from Dubai yesterday, and then now I'm flying to Ethiopia tomorrow. So it's a lot of stress on the system. I'm going to be honest with you, flying different time zones, things like that. But at this point, it's the right thing to do for humanity. And like when I say the right thing to do for humanity, I advise people to have lofty goals, like positive goals to keep you going. And then, that's what keeps me going, to say, you know what, I was in UAE, the Emirates, I gave out masks there. I'm going to be in Ethiopia 2 days giving out masks over there. And it's just a positive reinforcement to know that you're doing something positive for humanity. And that keeps me going. But whenever I can, I really, I just like to close my eyes. And in a perfect world, what I like to do is when I go to work is just stop by the beach, like for about 5 to 10 minutes. Like you said, breathing that clear, fresh air. And there's something about the ocean, the sounds. I know there are a lot of apps out there which have, peaceful and relaxing sounds. It doesn't even have to be music, but if you just put that as your background, that really helps me a lot. It's just this soothing feeling with very minimal efforts. But even if I do that for 15, 20 minutes in between, I just feel like much more relaxed. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I know. And people do get really busy. And I know I used to travel. I do travel. I don't do it so much now, but those time zones can kill you. But it's so important.
I'm so upset, Alena. I'm actually down to my last passport page. And, back in the day, Yeah, they used to just extend the pages, and now I'm so stressed because I only have one page left, and I really have to think what are the countries I really need to go or not. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, I got it in 2016, so it's done 5 years into the passport, and now it's a real where do I only have one page. Where do I really need to go to get these masks?
Wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah.
is a
You
big
do
stress
such good
factor for me.
work. That is a stress thing
It
because they
is.
don't issue those so easily right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now it takes I think a few weeks to get, so I think prior to all of this you could still get your accelerated passport in a day or 48 hours, but
Yeah,
that
you
doesn't
could.
exist.
You
Yeah,
could. Yeah, but
yeah,
not
yeah,
anymore. Everything's harder. I just came back from New York and it was really interesting. Now, New York has a really good hold on it.
yeah,
And
they've been great.
I think I told you I was amazed by the kindness, and that's the thing. We put on these masks sometimes, and I've seen it here where I live, but in New York, they're so used to it because they've been suffering with it longer than we have, actually. And they are so kind. There is this, it's like all of a sudden, it's like people have just woken up to humanity. You see people just, there's an easiness on the streets. There's not that rush that there used to be. And people are saying hello and they're kind. Here, I still see some people, they walk in and it's like they have this mask on. They can't talk to you. They can't reach out to you. I think that's going to hurt us in the end. I think now's the time when we need to show the kindness and the compassion, which will not only help that other person, you don't know, maybe that person's going to spiral down any minute. And there are people doing it. So that person needs a hello from you more than anything in the world.
True, it's
And for
true.
you,
Simple.
it's simple little things. You don't have to hug. You can do the elbow thing. I think everybody's doing the elbow thing now. But that nice hello. And for heaven's sakes, it helps you too. We can build community. We can build a better community even now if we really put our minds to it, I think.
I agree.
Yeah. So we need to reach out and not feel like we are in this total isolation. I think it's funny. We kind of have isolated ourselves. If we know we're all in the same boat and we understand that, I think that would open us up. And if we open up, then that will help our mental health. That's my theory right there.
Agree.
Yeah. So for you, and now with everything else, I really want them to know about your masks, where to go for the masks, where to, you've got a website or a landing page that they can look at these masks because you are a little designer too.
Yeah, prior we were supposed to launch. It's called by Rajeev Fernando. That's the brand, and we were supposed to launch sometime in March. But then obviously all my attention shifted to COVID-19.
Yeah.
But now the interesting thing about this, so our website is called Mask Up Earth, and that's where you can find out all the information. But the interesting thing over here is the only way to get these masks are through donations, really. So people have been calling me all the time. How much do I pay? Where is it at? I said, well, it's just being donated. We're not selling it to the public. So
Right.
if you, our listeners out there, if you have a community that you feel is in need, please reach out to me. Go to the webpage and
Yeah.
out and say, hey, I know this community, they're really suffering or we're suffering. I'm happy to send out free masks. We pay for the shipping. We just send the masks to keep people safe. So that's the different thing. It's a self-run, it's a self-funded charity. So it's really I've been sponsoring the charity this year.
Yeah.
So it's
Which
just
is wonderful. I mean, what a giving. I mean, that is the utmost giving to tune because you're paying for the production, the creation, everything.
Yeah. This
That's
is just a
deal.
rare year in the history of mankind. And I at the end of this, I want to be able to look back and say I did everything I could. I will never be able to say I did everything I could. I'm positive, but I should be in a position to say, you know what, I tried and I did some stuff that could help people.
Did
So
work.
want any sort of profit or anything. We just like I said to all our listeners out there, if you feel there's a community or If you feel there's a community that needs help, please reach out to us on our webpage, maskupearth.org. It tells us about the campaign. It's all about love,
Yes.
Alena and I have been discussing positivity, and I really think love is what keeps the planet together. So that's our campaign, and it's love. All our masks are made with a lot of love.
Yeah, yes, they are. And they're going out spreading love. And I think right now that's what we do need. That kindness leads to love. Well, I'm doing what I can. I've got that meditation on Friday, spreading the love around the world. And people are joining that. I think that gives them power and knowing and opening their heart. And when we open our heart, we can move mountains. And that's what we forget when we have fear. If we really open our hearts, then we see what's really real, and then we can act. And I think it's a very good time for us to start opening our hearts. We might not be able to show our smile, but we can open our hearts. And I think that's very important. So, okay, so they can look for you there. Is there anywhere else that you are that people can look and learn more about you?
So really, if you want to know any COVID-19 information on my thoughts, I mean, people just Google me, and there are all kinds of write-ups and interviews that I do about that. But yeah, stay tuned. There's a lot coming up. My company, the fashion company, is coming up. I do have 2 documentary films also, which I've worked.
Great.
Yeah. One is a movie about Zika virus mothers and babies. It was a 5-year project, how I followed the baby every year to see how they do developmentally, like how they develop, because it's a new virus and no one knows the exact future. So that was a 5-year film. And then I did a film, it's called Smugglers and Refugees. And Smugglers and Refugees is really a movie where I started going out and treating refugees for, various, as a physician. But at this point, I asked, so for you and me, when we say the word smuggler, we think of, a dirt bag or something. I pardon my French if it's offensive. But I spoke to hundreds of these refugees, and they told me for them, smugglers are like gods. And I said, what does that mean? And what their way of doing it is, they say, for example, Syria, where they're in Syria, the government is trying to kill them. Then when they find their way to get into Europe, the people in Europe, they're trying to kill them as well. They don't want them to come into their countries. So the smuggler poses a unique role of bringing the refugee from one country to another country. And now they say, they've given us a new shot at life. So I found that really fascinating. And all of a sudden, the film about medical care and refugees just changed to Smugglers and Refugees. So during the film, we found ways to interview smugglers under, dangerous conditions. Of course, we have to establish contact, determine trust, and after months of trusting people, we go undercover and we interview these smugglers, and we want to hear their stories. So yeah, it was a very interesting film. My poor cameraman.
I will watch that.
Yeah.
I find that really fascinating.
Yeah, I feel bad for my cameraman because I told him it's going to be a medical documentary film, and then it just changed to this overnight. And he's like, I didn't sign up for this. I said, well, if you want to get out now. That's fine. But I said, I'm doing this film. If you want to join or not. So he didn't have.
Very cool. No, I think that's very cool. Well, way back, the people who did the Underground Railroad, they were thought of as smugglers or people that were not good, and yet look at what they did for all the people who got out of places they hated and into. They were the whole reason for that Underground Railroad. Yeah.
Very interesting. I mean, what I was really surprised by while interviewing these people were they have a sense of community. Actually, it's interesting. Okay, everyone gets paid for what I do. Like, I go to the office, I go to the hospital, I get a salary for it. So these people, they have their role and they get paid for a job. There are a few smugglers who, of course, are ruthless, where they've thrown refugees into the ocean. They're trying to run from the police. But most of them I spoke to, they have a sense of purpose, and they say, we want to help our people. it was really I was just
That's
I
huge.
really can't wait to complete this film and put it out there. It's
Yeah, I will. You will definitely have me watching it because I'm fascinated by it.
I'll send you a copy as soon as
Oh,
it's
do. I would like that very much. It has been a pleasure to have you on. And I am so glad that we have covered so much. And for everyone out there, don't allow yourself to go into the fear. When you start to feel that fear, do something instead that counteracts it, that gives you control in the situation. And that can be a little thing. Like I said, turning on the music and dancing in your house, breaking the cycle. You got to break it. It's like, because once it grabs hold of you, things just get worse. So get up in the morning and do a gratitude pad. Start writing out the things you're grateful for. Listen to music, get out in your car and drive, contact people and friends, have live plants and things in your house that are alive, things that bring you back into living world care. And when you're out and about, use your senses, be smart, but know that somebody out there might be suffering more than you are. And open your heart. And I think if you do these things, you're going to survive and build a community like none they've ever seen. We can make this a better world, not a scarier world. And for everyone out there, you want that inner calm, you want to regain it, then I've got the perfect program for you. And it's 7 days of all these different things that you can try to get yourself into that meditation, get that centering no matter what, even if you're going in for that promotion or that whatever, or you're really tired because you're traveling all over the world. How do you get that centering when everything's going on? So that's at soulmanifesto.com. But most of all, take care of yourself, open your heart, and build the new world you want.
This has been Magical Moments with Alena, featuring Alena Chapman. If you missed an episode, download it now on iTunes, Spotify, TuneIn, CastBox, Deezer, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform. Learn more online at soulmanifesto.com.
Podcasts by Federated Media.